We're back out here again, and today we're talking about a few tips, tricks, and some baits that I've learned over the years that help make September bass fishing so much easier, including a couple of surprises. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Okay, we have this popping frog tied on, black and yellow. And we are in the thick stuff here, kids. Ooh, I got him. Ooh, that was a good bite too. He came up after it. Ooh, boy, that was a good one. This is a good fish. Boy, he went after it. You're not getting in that grass. Come back over this way. Get out of there. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and month of September is the hardest time of year to catch a bass. That's what we've said. That's what everybody says, right? Those waters are warm, that vegetation is in full bloom, and those bass, they seem to have just shut down or disappeared. The ones that you can find, they don't seem to be biting anything. They're just too hot. But there is very good news on the horizon, as those nighttime temperatures, they have begun to drop. And those bass have noticed those big schools that they usually pile up deep, offshore during the summertime. They're slowly starting to break up, and they're slowly starting to ease up as those bass are starting to drift outwards and head upshore towards the mouth of creek arms, towards drains, towards more accessible locations, not just for boat anglers, but for bank anglers as well. But even in my area, as those nighttime temperatures start to ease up just a little bit, and that water temperature, which has already dropped close to 10 degrees, well, those bass, they start slowly migrating out. Not all at once, to be sure, but more and more, we are seeing signs of those bass breaking up and heading to the mouths of those creek arms. And not only that, they are becoming more active. They are starting to feed. They're starting to feed actually on smaller shiner and smaller shad, because that's what's most readily available. As the shad spawn, well, those small fry shad, they're only about an inch or two long by this point, and they're light snacks. Those bass are in feeding mode, and it's not that hard to coax a bite under the right circumstances with the right gear, the right tackle. So I'm fortunate enough that this September has been exceptionally good for me. I've caught more fish this September than I ever have before, and I want to share those secrets that I have with you, and hopefully you'll be able to put a few more bass in the boat for yourself. Ooh, did I get him? Yeah, I got him. I got him. He came at it and then he ran at me. All right, there we go. There we go. Boy, he went after it. He T-boned it. We're going to get you fixed up, buddy. That's a good little fish right there. A little 1 pound bass that we got on the jerkbait. Nice little start. Gets the skunk out of the boat. All right, thank you very much, buddy. And I have to talk about it, right? The good old jerkbait. Now, a lot of you guys aren't throwing these, and I'm telling you, you are missing out on some easy bites. This thing has produced so well for me. This jerkbait here, which is a KVD 200 in the chrome shad. I'm throwing this today because we had a little bit of rain, we had heavy overcast skies, and a little bit of wind, and that water had just a little bit of stain. So those conditions were just right for this chrome color, and it wasn't but a few casts in and I was hooked up on a fish. So whenever I need to get the skunk out of the boat, whenever I need to catch a bass, I'm grabbing this and I'm throwing it because I know whether it's a dink, whether it's a dinosaur, this is going to hook into something and I can go ahead and I can get that ball rolling and go ahead and get the day going. So this is what's working for me. And if you notice, these are smaller jerk baits. Like I said about the shad, the shiner, the small bait fish, they are smaller. So I'm going with a smaller presentation. I'm going with that smaller bait. Another one that has been really good for me is this little cotton cordell, this little matte colored bluegill one that I got from Walmart. This is another one that has been producing so well for me. It's a smaller one, little jerk minnow, the old, the rebel minnows. Those are also great. But again, you've got to have those under the right conditions because they tend to have that chrome flash to them. I throw those whenever I'm looking at overcast skies, whenever I've got just a little bit of wind. But for a bright sunny day, bluebird skies, more calm conditions, clear water, this is what I'm throwing. And again, this is the same thing as this. Under those right conditions, it's a quick, easy bite. I throw it out there, first couple of casts, and I hook into a fish. It might be a dink or it might be a giant, but either way, I'm hooking into a fish and I can get the skunk out of the boat just that fast. So if you're not fishing a jerkbait, especially a smaller one this time of year, you're really missing out on some easy bites. It doesn't matter if you're fishing from the boat. It doesn't matter if you're fishing from the bank. I've been catching them both ways. So make sure you have some of these tied on and ready to go in your arsenal because otherwise, you're just missing out. Now, as we head into the fall and those leaves start changing colors, well, another really good producer for me is this guy right here. This is just a little bitsy bug. This is a 1/4 ounce jig, from Strike King. Everybody loves these things because they work so well. Now, this is a black one, and this is just paired up with a Zoom swimming chunk, just a little swimming chunk. That's the junior size. One of these right here, and nothing fancy, nothing spectacular. They work so well. And I'm fishing these on the outer edges of those thick hydrilla lines or in the empty pockets. Now, usually if I'm fishing these in the pockets, they have an opening where I can drag these through where I'm not actually dragging it through the grass because these tend to gum up just a little bit. But for the most part, if I can find an open spot on the grass edge, whether it's hydrilla, whether it's pondweed, this is going to get you bites. Like we talk about downsizing just a little bit, and those bass are just looking for a little snack, a little morsel. They're just inhaling it, and I've gotten some really nice bites on this particular jig. This exact jig has really produced well for me this year. Now, if you've been around the channel for a long time, then you're going to recognize this guy, the stupid rig, or the wacky jig as we call it. I've just taken a bitsy bug jig, a 1/4 ounce or a 3/16, and I've taken the skirt off of it, and I've wacky rigged a 5-inch stick bait to it. And from the bank, from the boat, if you're fishing near wood, this is going to be money, especially this time of year, as those bass, they are heading back towards those pockets. And what are they doing as they're making their way back to the mouths of those creek arms? They're following those traditional routes. And along those routes, you're going to find spots where they are pausing to rest or to feed or whatever. And that's where this comes in. If you find a rock pile, you find a brush pile, throw this in there. And it may look like, it might be a little bit too much, but it actually doesn't fall nearly as fast as you think. It actually has kind of a moderate, slow fall to it. So you can fish this in 6 to 8 feet of water, but you're still going to have to count it down. You're still going to have to give it time to get to the bottom. But I'm telling you what, these things, especially from the bank and especially at the Little Lake, this thing is bass candy. They love these things. There's a particular place I know where I can throw this and always get a bite. This is another one of those where when I need to get a bite and I need to get a bite right now, I'm throwing the wacky jig, and this thing just keeps producing time and time again. Now, lastly, something a little bit different, something a little bit out of the ordinary from what I'm usually doing this time of year, and that is some topwater. I've got a cotton cordell Boy Howdy tied on. This is the prop version. I've got this on the new reel, the new Abu Garcia, the Max Z, and it's just a 7-to-1 gear ratio. I've got 30-pound braid on it. I'm tying it to a 17 to 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. Sometimes I'll do a monofilament leader if I know I'm going to be throwing top water that day, because you want to have a little bit of extra stretch whenever I'm using the braid. I'm not so much worried about the floating aspect of it because the leader length is usually not long enough and the bait is buoyant enough, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. But if I've got some braid and I'm working with a heavier rod, a lot of times I want that extra stretch that a monofilament leader will give me. So that's usually the reason if I'm using mono. But this guy right here, this has been my best topwater bait all year. I am so glad that I found these things. These old school Cotton Cordell boy howdies, these things are just amazing. I love them. This is the gold colored one. This is the one I was throwing today because, as I said before, we had a little bit of rain. We had some cloud cover. It was light chop on the water. And I was throwing this along the edge under some brush. There was some brush that was hanging out over the water, and there was some timber that was laying adjacent to it. Like we say, find the spot within the spot, right? So that was a prime spot. That was a high percentage spot. And that's where I threw this. And again, it was great. It was a great producer because this, whenever I want to catch a tank, whenever I want to catch a toad, whenever I'm looking to catch the big boys, that's when I pull out the top water. It is such a fun bite, but it's not the only thing that was getting me those really good bites today. There's something else that we're getting into that time of year, one of the windows of the year where this is going to be your best producing topwater. What is that? Well, it's going to be this, a topwater frog. Everybody loves throwing a frog. And right now, it can be one of the prime times to be throwing a frog. As that water starts to cool down, as you're seeing those bass, especially in the shallow water, you've got all that vegetation. You've got the pond weed is filled out, the lily pads are filled out, the hydrilla is coming up and becoming emergent vegetation. And this guy right here is just going to slay them. Now, this is a popping frog. This is what I was working today. I was casting it into the empty parts of that hydrilla, into that gap and along those seams, and I was just popping it along. I was working it faster than I would a popper, but not as fast as I would work a regular frog. And this has got rattles in it. So I would pop it and then I would let it sit. And I would pop it and then I would let it sit. And this thing just got destroyed. It got destroyed on the very first cast. So I was really happy at a lot of the success that I was able to have on this topwater frog. And even still some other topwaters. A popper is a great choice. A popper of any type is a great choice. Or if you're looking to cover water, a walking bait such as a spook, right? Or a jaywalker, something along those lines. Those are going to be great baits for covering water. But you've got to be careful with something like a whopper plopper or a walking bait because those don't handle vegetation so well. So keep it along the seams, don't go over the top. Otherwise, well, on a walking bait, you'll get the hooks all gummed up. And on a whopper plopper, those types of baits, you're going to get that propped all gummed up and you're going to have a hard time cleaning all that gunk out of there. But that doesn't mean don't throw it around the thick stuff. That just means look for your openings, look for your opportunities, find the places you can make those targeted casts, those accurate casts, and work your bait and bring it back to the boat. And you'll be fine, you'll be okay. But having those tips, having that information, and knowing where to look for those bass, like we said, those bass right now are following those old highways that they have for generations. And it's the same path that they find in the spring and that they follow whenever they're coming back out of those creek arms after the spawn to head deep. They follow that same path. So if you've got a roadbed, or if you've got a particular creek arm with its channel swing or something like that that's got a submerged creek, or you've got a hump or a saddle, and those bass like to go from one spot to one spot to one spot, well, those are the types of places that you're going to want to target. Places along those highways, because right now, well, it's starting to turn into rush hour and those bass are going to be along those. And whenever you can find something, a good bait, then you can get yourself on a good repeating pattern. And remember, we want to fish patterns, not spots, because patterns you can replicate. You can do it over and over and over again. And that's what these baits are about. These baits are about putting ourselves on patterns to be able to consistently catch those fish, those good fish, every time we go out. So there you have it. There are a few of my tricks and some of my baits and the reasons why I'm using what I'm using for the end of September. And believe me, it can make September fishing so much easier. You will be able to find those fish faster, and not only will you be able to catch them more, but you'll be able to catch better quality fish, and you'll be able to repeat that every single time that you go. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.